Chevra, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Chayei, and in Crown Heights, now we're in the midst of the Kinos HaShluchim, the convention of the Rebbe Shluchim from all over the world. Now I think we're holding in the neighborhood of 6,000 Shluchim, emissaries of the Rebbe, that were sent to have a positive influence and bring benefit to the entire world. So we're going to speak a thought of the week, which is connected obviously to the Parsha, but also of very supreme relevance to the whole work of public service and what the Rebbe's view and perspective was on that. First of all, we'll start with the Pasuk, and the Pasuk is going to be a blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Hashem shall bless you and guard you. And this brings us to the thought of the week. In this week's parsha, there's the main theme of this week's parsha talks about the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka, thus ensuring the continuation of the Jewish nation. But before that, it says, Vavram Zokin Bo Bayomim. Avram was old, well on in years. Vashem Beirechas Avram Bakel, and Hashem blessed Avram with everything. So first over here we have a very interesting Balaturim. I was very happy to find it because here the Balaturim says a source for something which is obvious, and that is when you get old, then you really need blessings. I just want to read you what the Balaturim says. V'Avram Zokin, on the words of Avram Zokin, the Balaturim says, Smichle v'Hashem Beirach. Right after it says V'Avram Zokin, he became old, then it says that Hashem blessed him with everything. Kishehiskin v'Yochel oid lotzeis v'Lovoi. When Avram is old, where he can't come and go anymore, he can't travel, i.e., he's not as active as he was in his youth. He's slowing down. Lisa v'litin means to do business. Oz hutzrich levracha. Then he really needed a bracha. V'Hashem berchoi, and Hashem blessed him. So even though we have in the story of Avram, the beginning of the story of Avram, Lech Lecha, where it speaks about the blessings right at the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, that Hashem gives Avram special blessings, but over here we have another special blessing. And why? Because of Avram Zaken. Because when you get old, you especially need a blessing. Okay, Rashi over here brings down a famous Rashi that Avram Zaken Baba Yom Hashem Beirech Hashem Bakel, that Bakel goes on the child, and he had Yitzchak, and obviously the connection over here is because now it's going to start the story of how Avram is searching for a shidduch for Yitzchak. So he was blessed by Bakel. He had a child, Yitzchak, but obviously the purpose of Yitzchak, if you have a child, is to have a grandchild, the continuation, and of the movement of spreading monotheism, Yiddishkeit, etc., etc. So therefore, Avram Zaken, he's getting older, so now he really has to start getting down to the tachlis of it all. And as Chassidus explains, one of the explanations of why so much space is spent in Torah talking about the shidduch and what Avram wants, and etc., and how Eliezer repeats it, is because of how important it is, this shidduch in the history of the nation, and how everything is dependent on this shidduch of Yitzchak. Okay, so that's one way to learn pshat on a simple level. On a simple level of Avram Zaken, and if we started worrying seriously about getting a shidduch for Yitzchak, etc. But, obviously, according to Chassidus, we're going to talk about something which is much more important as a lesson for us in our daily service of Hashem. Obviously, the Torah is describing Vavram Zaken Baba Yamim. So there's many questions here. Like, for example, why does the pasuk have to say Vavram Zaken Baba Yamim? If it means he was old, why do you have to also add well on in his years? Just say Vavram Zaken. Why do you have to say Baba Yamim? Doesn't it seem like it's the same thing? Number one. Number two, is this some kind of special praise? Are we speaking about a virtue? Avram went the way of all men. He aged. Okay, is that what the pasuk is telling us? Obviously, according to Pshat, it's part of the narrative. But we're looking for something deeper. What lesson is there? What message is there that teaches me something in relation to my serving Hashem? So, basically, I'm going to repeat now a sikh of the Rebbe in Chelik Gimel, which the Rebbe brings down from a medrash that there are those that have zikna, but not baba yomim, and there are those that are baba yomim and don't have zikna. They're two separate things. What's the difference between the two things? Zikna means that you became old. Baba Yomim means, on the simple pshat of the medrash, Baba Yomim means that you actually live those amount of years. Like, let's see, so for example, you could have a young person that could be a zokin, and that's the famous story of Elazar ben Azariah, who Harani keben shivim shana. He felt like he was 70 because he looked like he was 70 because his beard was white, etc. So he was a zokin, but he wasn't a Baba Yomim. Then you could have somebody who's a Baba Yomim. He reached the age according to the passport, but he doesn't have the wisdom. What does zokin mean? Zokin is eshakon lechachma. So he doesn't have that quality. So over here, when we say in the pasuk, Avram Zakin, he reached a level of spiritual development, of wisdom, and he was also had the wisdom of experience, a high level of intellect, and he has both qualities, Zakin and Baba Yom. But according to Chassidus, now we come to another explanation, based on the Zohar. Zeh shakana chachma, chachma is connected to Torah. So Avram Zakin is concerning limud Torah, learning Torah. Baba Yomim, the Zohar says that these were Yom and Shleimin, full days, not days that were lacking. Yom and Ilan means elevated days. The days were elevated. And it's explained that that's talking about the mitzvahs. So there's Torah and there's mitzvahs. But let's take a pause for a second. The Rebbe explains that the significance of the difference between Torah and mitzvahs represent two areas of perfection in man's achievement and man's accomplishments. But first, there is a Gemara that says there were Shnei Alofim Toyu, there were 2,000 years of chaos. When we look at the history of the world, and 2,000 doesn't necessarily mean 2,000, it can mean 1,001 as soon as we get into the year 2000, the beginning of the 2000. So there was a tkufa, there was a stage, an era, a millennial, 2 millennials, whatever you want to call it. There was a tkufa which is called Shnei Alofim Toyu. There's a tkufa which is called Shnei Alofim Teira, and there's a tkufa which is called Shnei Alofim Yemais Mashiach. And it says that from Avram Avinu starts Shnei Alofim Teira. Misheba Avram Hischel, the world was ba'afela, was in darkness, until Avram came, Hischel. So from Avram Avinu starts Matan Torah, the beginning of the concept of Matan Torah. And in these two words of the pasuk, Avram Zakin, Baba Yomim, lies the secret of Matan Torah, the secret of Judaism, the secret of the ultimate plan, the secret of what it's all about. What's it all about? What's Matan Torah about? Everyone knows the famous Medrash, and it's spoken about in all the Sichos of the Rebbe of Shavuos, Yisroi, Vaschanan. That before Matan Torah there was a Gzeira El Yenim Liyorda Lamata V'Tachtonim Li'al Lamayla. That which was above did not come down below, and that which was below did not come down above. Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem V'Oretz Nosnav Ne'odam. There was a split, there was a division between the spiritual and the physical. The Uft of Matan Torah was bit like Gzeira El Yenim Yorda Lamata V'Ani Amaschel Vayered Havayel Harsinai. Hashem himself lowered himself and came down. And the Tachtenim was Yal Lamayla. That which was below came up above. And there was marriage between heaven and earth, the spiritual and the physical, and the beginning of the actual transforming of the world to make it a Dira B'Tachtenim. Which that's the whole purpose of everything. V'zeh kol adam v'sachlis v'riyosei v'riyos kol elemes El Yainim V'Sachtoinim Liyas Le'izbarech Dira B'Tachtenim. Hashem desired to have a dwelling place down here below. Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu Lias Leis Baruch Dira B'Tachtenim. Matan Torah is the beginning, the actual beginning of the story, of the adventure of making a Dira B'Tachtenim. Who started it? So we have how this idea of Matan Torah, Elyonim Yordel Lamata, V'Tachtenim Yal Lamayla, we have that on a universal level, on a global level, on a cosmic level, and then we have it on a personal level, in the person himself, in the individual. He also has to go through this sort of avodah, this Matan Torah, which means his Elyonim Yodel Tachtoinim, and his Tachtoinim Yal Elyonim. And in one way we could say that this is the difference between Zokin and Baba Yomim, the difference between the avodah of Torah and the avodah of mitzvahs. Torah is Chochmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's primarily a spiritual thing, cerebral. You have a brain, you have intellect, you have seichel, you have maskolas, seichel HaTorah, and you learn Torah. And when it comes to Torah Shalom Peh, it's all about Asagas HaTorah. So it's more in the realm of personal development and something spiritual. And somebody could very well learn Torah for himself, locked up in a room. And for some people, it's actually more geschmack. As steht in Chassidus Asachmol, as the Bali Mechen, intellectuals like to be left alone. They like to be left alone to have time for introspection and meditation, etc. And a Zulas is Mavalval. Others are Mavalval. The world is Mavalval. They like quiet. They don't like the noise of the outside world. The outside world is a disturbance, a distraction. So that's Vavram Zokin, Zesha Kona Chochmeh, goes on Limud Torah. But then there's Baba Yomim. Baba Yomim means that he gets involved with the days. That's how he's impacting the world, how he's impacting creation. And that's why it says Baba Yomim. We're talking about time. One of the main factors of the world, of the Bria, of Nevroim, is man, time. In general, we say the world has Olam, Shana, Nefesh. And then, in particular, we talk about the Agbolas of the world. There's Olam, which is space, Shana, which is time. And according to Chassidus, Rabbi Yel used to talk about this a lot, the Agbola of Zman is greater than the Agbola of Olam. If I remember correctly, Olam, Vuer is Izer. Oh, but it's again the fighter. Space is limited, that it only goes till here and not further. But where he is. But Zman, was is be'etzam aninyin from his chalkus, it shows in something which is broken up in a second, a millisecond, yada, yada, yada. So time represents something which is, even in itself, it's fractured, it's broken, it's split. So the limitations of time are greater than the limitations of space. And if the whole idea of the world is limitations, gvul, so time represents and signifies the ultimate of creations, something which is limited, broken, etc. So now, and this is the meaning of Baba Yomim, first of all, in general, it's talking about time, it's talking about the world and limitations. But even more than that, we have to look at time as a creation itself. In other words, it's not only that we have things that exist in time. So let's say you shake a lulav. So you took an object, a physical object of this world, and you did a mitzvah with it. Or you put on tefillin, you took a physical thing of this world, and you did a mitzvah with it. But then there's that you did it in this time, in this day. So in other words, there's a concept, there's an importance, there's a value, and a supreme value in doing a mitzvah every single day. And that's the meaning of Baba Yamin. Instead of giving, let's say, $100 in one day, maybe you could say it's important to give better $50 one day and leave the $50 for the next day. Or maybe even better, give today $100 and make sure tomorrow at least to give $1 also. Why? Because the $100 for today does not take care that for the next day I also have to give tzedakah. I also have to do a mitzvah with that day, every single day. has to be elevated, not because of the maaseh, not because of the action of the day, not because of the action of the mitzvah, but because I'm taking a component of the world, the time, the minute of that day, and using it properly. It's about der Tag, so sein a Tag. The time should be elevated. And this is very, very sweet, according to Chassidus in particular, where we say everything that's created has a life force. I think I mentioned this maybe once before. In English, there's an expression we say killing time. Killing time means wasting time. But according to Chassidus and according to Torah, according to Yiddishkeit, killing time means literally, you're killing time. You're taking something which is alive, and when you're not using it properly, you're killing it, etc. Because its life force is not being channeled in the right direction. So in a way, you're killing time. So now we understand what means. When we speak about Avram Avinu, we say, what was his quality? Avram Zokin Boba Yomim. Number one, I forgot to mention, Avram in general was a super spiritual person on a highly, totally advanced intellectual level. As we know, the name Avram also is explained to mean Seichel Anel Mikol Rai, and Av, father, also represents intellect. Ram means exalted. He had such a level of intellect which was totally beyond, which is not understood by anyone else. And Zakin sometimes is explained to be Atik, old, and it's connected also to the spiritual level of godliness called Atika, Kadisha. So we have Avram, who on a certain level is the level which represents complete abstract thought, beyond intellect in all its purity. And he developed himself in such a way to the highest degree. And that's what it means when we say Avram Zaken. We're talking about super philosopher, intellectual master of the highest order. And then we say, but also Baba Yamim. He brings that down into the world. It's not self-serving. It's not only about his own development, but it's about bringing it into the world to change the world. And this is what it means, the Rebbe explains. There were many tzaddikim, let's say before Avram, that they were very, very qualified or special in either of these two directions. Either they were someone who was more a zaken person, they worked on their own self-growth and spiritual development and inner character growth, guidance, education. Or they were Baba Yomim, they were more action-oriented. Askin Tziburi, members of boards, getting involved in movements that change the world, etc., etc. Saving the planet. But we never, and the same as Vaket, so it was one of the two. But we did not have the person who married both and perfected himself in both directions. Avram Zokin, he was a master at self-development, elevating himself spiritually in the service of Hashem, and that represents Torah, which is more a spiritual sort of activity. Getting united with Hashem and attaching to Hashem and connection to Hashem, and that's Avram Zaken, which represents primarily Torah, which is more an avodim atzmoi. But at the same time, Baba Yomim, the avoid of mitzvahs, which is more about engagement with the world and transforming it. The marriage of disengagement and engagement in the same person, and in both directions, in both areas, graduated with top honors. And the only way you could do that is when you're serving Hashem and it's not limited, when you reach deep into your neshama and you connect to the Eibishter in a deep way, and you're into doing what the Eibishter wants, and you realize the Eibishter wants both, and you don't sacrifice one for the other. And this is a connection to the Kinnis HaShluchim. I'm not here to talk to anybody but myself, but some people mistakenly think that a shliach is just a plain askin tziburi, which is really someone who could be a regular balabas, a regular layman, and this is what the Rebbe wants, in a way. In a way, the Rebbe wants everyone to be a shliach, but when he says everyone should be a shliach, it means he wants everyone to get involved in klal arbeit. Everybody should be involved in social work. Everyone should be involved in social consciousness. Everyone should be involved and live their life for others. But to be an Askin Tziburi doesn't mean you're in Shevet Levi. The Rebbe said the Shluchim are from Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi means that they're the scholars, they're the spiritual. I don't want to say spiritual elite because the word elite is a terrible word. But if we're only going to take it in the positive sense, allow me, please, to take it in a positive sense. The Rebbe wants the shluchim to be spiritually elite. Not spiritually elite because you're somebody special, but working on it. You're working on growing spiritually. Avoida imatzmai. Vavram zokin. You have to have krisit in the Torah, you have to learn chassidus, you have to daven. You especially have to be more attached spiritually to your source, to your power base, in order to be able to go into hostile territory and succeed, as we spoke many times. So therefore, what the Rebbe wants from shluchim is this sicha of Chelik Gimel Chayei that brings it out perfectly. Or like we spoke at other times, the unification, the merging of the Aved of Ratzoi and Shuv. On the one hand, your mind is in a higher place, spiritual, and it's your body which is involved in wherever you are, in hostile territory, extracting souls, sparks, and elevating. We spoke about these things many times, so I don't want to elaborate, but you get the general idea. So this is an unbelievable message for every single one of us to be a successful Yid on this planet Earth and to be a successful Shliach. We have to remember that the Vavram, Zokin, and the Bo Bayomim go hand in hand. Not to sacrifice one for the other, but dafke, precisely when you have both together, then you're the story of a Jew. The first Jew, Avram Avinu, and then you're the story of Matan Torah, El Yoinim Yadol Tachtonim and Tachtonim Yal Lamayla. You're working in both areas. Your El Yoinim, which is your Zokin, comes down to the Baba Yomim, and the Baba Yomim, you elevated the days. So this is the story of Matan Torah, and this is the story of Yiddishkeit, and this is how you will make a successful Dira B'Tachtonim. I recently heard another word of Baba Yomim. I'll just mention it B'Kitzer. That the Rebbe once said, Baba Yomim means you go into the days. You're not coasting. You're not treading water. You're not driving in cruise control. You have to live the day. That's what it means. Baba Yomim. Every day you get up and you're active in the day. Make it a day. A real day. A full day. And that's what it means, Baba Yomim. So we'll just finish with an anecdote, a very famous anecdote. And they say there was a story of a rich man who was in a fire. And he was in a building, and he was very, very scared for his life. Thank God, the fireman bursted through the door, and he grabbed the rich man, and he carried him to safety, and he saved his life. And the rich man was very, very touched, deeply, deeply touched. And he turns to the fireman, and he says, you know, I have means, I have wealth, and I would really, really like to reward you. I'd like to reward you. You saved my life. Name your price. Whatever your price is, I'll give you whatever you want. And the fireman says, nah. I was just doing my job. I don't want you to give me anything. That's not what this is about. It's about me doing my job. So the rich man says, come on. It doesn't take away from the good deed you did, but I want to pay you. How much could I have? What should I do for you? How much do you want? He says, you want to know something really? I'll ask you for only one thing. And what's that thing? I want you to live a life that was worth saving. That's what I want. Live a life that was worth saving. And this is what it means, Baba Yomim. Baba Yomim means that you think about time management, and you think about time, and you think about the days. And every day when you're living, you're asking yourself the question, am I living a life that's worth saving, that's worth existing? Maybe we should help. We should live with this thought in our mind and this lesson, the way the Rebbe explains, Zokin and Baba Yomim, and carry it through in our shlichus. And we should be successful in our shlichus. Lasas leizbarach dira b'tachtenim, and this will bring the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Take it from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.